friends, voicing ideas, diminished chords. There's a couple things I really like about diminished chords. One is their function and another is their symmetry. So I thought I'd share some ideas with you today about something that I've been working on that I find really useful to get some very different harmonic colors that hopefully you can incorporate into your playing. And really where this idea comes from, or the drive for this idea comes from the sort of traditional use of diminished seventh chords on the guitar in particular. And I'm not going to get into great detail about the function of diminished chords. There's tons of stuff on YouTube about that. But really, I want to talk about the guitar-ish uses of the diminished seventh chord, in that it's very convenient when you move a diminished chord in minor thirds, you get its inversions, right? So if I'm assuming anyone listening to this video knows about this. You take any diminished seventh chord, like the one I have here, an E diminished, and if I move it in minor thirds, it is the inversions of that chord, right? We don't have to change any fingering. It's the same fingering moving in minor thirds. When you look at the notes of that chord, they're all the same. So every inversion is the same notes. Now that's cool for guitar, but it's kind of cliche sounding. You probably all heard this. It's kind of a sound. It's fairly cliche. So I was trying to find, like, how can I use this idea of symmetry but not have quite that same sort of dated sound. So this is something I've come across and thought you might find useful. So the function that we're going to focus on today for the diminished chord is really the half-whole diminished. So again, I'm assuming many people listening to this video would know this stuff, that it's really common in the jazz world, in the jazz vocabulary anyway, to superimpose a half-whole diminished scale, chord scale, over a dominant chord. So that's the function that we're going to be talking about today, is playing over a dominant chord and using the half-whole diminished scale, which would give us some nice set of tensions in all the different colors. So we would get, again, I'm going to use A as my example because I can use this as a pedal. In the example of A, using a half-whole diminished, we have, of course, the root, the flat 9, the sharp 9, the third, the sharp 4, the 5th, the 6th, or the 13th, and the flat 7. So it's an 8-note scale, but it has all these very useful tensions that can be superimposed over the top of a dominant chord. So that's the function. But what can we do with this? Well, what I've attempted to do is to think of playing, like, whether you're playing a chord melody or comping in this sort of context where you really want to know, like, what's on top. Like, for me, this is helpful. I'm not sure if this will work for you, but it's very helpful for me, is to always know, like, what is the function of the top note of my chord in relation to, its intervallic relationship to the root, to have voicings that I can use to support any melody against any chord tone. So I'm going to choose a particular position on the guitar. So I'm going to start with the root A, and again, that half-whole diminished. I'm going to just stay with these 4 notes, the root, the flat 9, the sharp 9, and the third. So how can my idea here is, how can I stay on the top 4 strings and come up with a voicing with each one of these 4 notes on top. So the way I'm approaching this is just to know that here's my chord scale. So I'm just going to use the notes of, again, I'll overlay this later so you can see too, in this position, what are the notes of that half-whole diminished. And I'm going to just choose a voicing that has each one of these on top. And for this first one, I'm going to choose this voicing. What I have here is an A, an E, a C sharp, and a B flat. So it's an A triad, A up my melody note to the flat 9 and choose a different set of notes on the other 3 strings that would help give some movement to the inner voices. And here's one that I like the sound of. So I have a B flat on top, an F sharp, a C sharp, and a G natural. So it's kind of like an F sharp triad with a G in the bottom. So this sound gives us more colors from that half-whole diminished chord scale. Continuing, if I move with the C natural on top and I play an A major triad down here, E natural, C sharp, and A, I get this sound. And finally, if I go up to the C sharp and I choose these notes, G natural, D sharp, and E, I get this, I like this because it has that minor second in the middle. So these are some voices that all contain notes from that half-whole diminished chord scale. So that's all well and good. Now what? Well, you could continue that up and down the neck, but again, going back to the second point of why I like diminished scales and chords in particular is not only their function, but their symmetry. So I know that didn't look very symmetrical because, you know, these fingerings might be a little different for some of you. But the idea now is if we move any of these voicings, like let's take the first one, this A triad with B flat, if we move that up a minor third. Now, unlike a traditional pure diminished seventh chord, moving the same voicing gives you the same gives you the next inversion of that chord. This is not going to give us that, right? If we move from the position on the 5th fret to here, a minor third higher, we have essentially a C major triad with a C sharp on the bottom. Those notes against the A root are the 3rd, the 5th, the flat 7th, and the sharp 9, not the flat 9, the 3rd, the 5th, and the root. So that the function changed, but it's still within the same chord scale. So this, and again, if I keep going up in minor thirds, all of those notes now are present in that half-whole diminished chord scale. So any of the ones that we looked at can be moved in minor thirds. So those are super useful. So combining them, moving them into different positions, moving them around can give you a lot of different options. So going back to what I played at the beginning of this video, I took that idea that I just walked you through, but I came up with actually 2 sets. So the first, again, going back to options with the root on top, flat 9 on top, third, sharp 9 on top, and third, a different set with those same notes on top could be something like this. So I've got an A, an F sharp, a D sharp, and a B flat. That's my first voicing. My second voicing is this one with the flat 9 on top. I've got the E, the D sharp, and the root. So flat 9, 5th, sharp 11, and root. And then with the sharp 9 on top, here's a different one, right? Sharp 11, 3rd, and root. And then with the 3rd on top, now I've got the 3rd, the 6th or the 13th, the sharp 11, and the flat 7. So now I have 2 sets, 2 different ways to harmonize those same notes, and those can be moved all over the fingerboard in minor thirds, and that's kind of what I played at the beginning. So I played that first set, and then I played the second set. I'm sorry, that's the wrong chord. So really much more modern sounding than, right? This cliche has gone away now. Now we have some really just different approaches to outline that harmonic structure. And then again, there's a lot of different functions for dominant chords, but this idea can be used on all of those functions. So hope you found this useful and that it can give you some new colors to add into your playing. Good luck.